Hello and welcome to Diorama Diaries. This is a small series where I'm taking a diorama which was made for me for a Christmas present and trying to recreate the same scene using new skills, new techniques which I've seen other modelers do, and basically having a go before putting them on the main layout. Before I get on, I want to show you the progress since the last episode. So as you saw previously, we'd just done the hardcore and all the gravel. That's now dried and is looking fairly smooth and uniform. Since then, I've added in the other buildings. I've also added the paving slabs in for those, and of course I've added in some containers. These are a scale model scenery kit, and there'll be their own episode involved in how to paint those up and make them look realistic. I've also added in some fencing. As you can see, I've got the gates to the left and at the back, and I've had a go at making my own cocktail stick fence. Now this is just drying as we see it here. It's very simply again scale model scenery fence posts, and then some cocktail sticks very carefully glued on, and they're literally drying as I say. And the next step is to paint them up using a light wash. But no, I'm quite pleased with those, and again, bit of DIY there, so I'm enjoying it. So at the actual stables in real life, there are several trees, as you imagine, being in the countryside. There's a large one which will sit to the left here, and there's a smaller one at the back, and then one here behind this fence, or in front of this fence as we're looking. So today's episode will be how I'm going to make custom trees. So it's by all accounts a messy process, so it's going to be great fun, and it'll be a bit of a laugh making a mess and seeing what we can come up with. So I'm going to tidy the diorama away, and we'll get on with the trees. Now the type of trees I'm going to be making are the floristry wire trees. As you'd imagine, they use floristry wire, which is this stuff. The method is very simple. You literally twist the strands together to form branches, and then you twist those together to form the main column of the tree, the main body. And once you're happy with the shape you get, you coat it with a product called Flexibark, which can only be described as a very wet, slightly brown polyfiller type stuff. And once that's dry, it sets hard of course, you then coat it with a bit more of a browner colour. I'm going to use the dark wash by Humble, literally because I've got it, and this will make my tree slightly browner, and that's the main body of the tree done. Once you've got your freshly barked tree, you cover it with the Wooden Scenics foliage. This is the matting pad that you pull apart into a very thin sort of netting that goes on the top. Once you've pulled that apart, you use hairspray, for example, and then using the coarse turfs or the fine turfs, you sort of thicken it up a bit until you're happy. And of course you can use other colours depending on the time of year you're modelling. All sounds very simple, but it's very DIY, and I'm looking forward to giving it a go. So here goes. Now with the floristry wire, you can get yourself sort of 10-inch stuff, and then more or less it's probably 5-inch stuff, 5-6 inch. These clumps were probably about 85p, something like that, and I've had a go already, and you'd probably get maybe 5 trees made out of those lot. Obviously it depends how detailed your tree is. The one I'm creating, or trying to create, which I'll show you now, obviously I'm going for a bit of a greener one than it is now, but this was a photo taken the other day. You can see it's a sort of relatively medium tree. It's not a very tall one in particular. So I'm going to begin twisting these wires together in pairs at first, and then once they're paired up, I'll twist the pairs together, and we'll see how it goes. So here we are, I've twisted 18 strands to make 9 doubles, obviously, together. Top tip I was told is if you leave a good centimetre, maybe 2, at the end and the top of each one, the base, obviously when they're twisted together, the bottom will spread out to be a good base for the tree, and the tops will spray out to be, I suppose, the finer edges of the branches, which will help hold the foliage together. So the next job is to twist these all together and try and make a tree-looking shape. So let's see how that goes. You see now, having twisted just 2 together, you can already see how the tree is beginning to form. Obviously the branch where my fingers are is getting thicker, and then the upper branches ready to hold the leaves. So when you've got lots of these double strands together, you really will get a nice tree shape. And now what a difference wrapping all 9 double strands together has made. You can see it's a much more substantial piece. The bottom is ready to be splayed, so it's easy to stand up. I'm just going to shape the top now into a sort of more roundy tree shape, and see how that looks. And there we are, feet splayed out. It's much more tree shaped. I've bent it ever so slightly so this end is flat, because that's where the driveway into the stables would be, and then of course the tree is free to grow to the left, so it is quite a nice round shape. The next part, of course, is to add the flexi bark, which is quite a fun part and can be quite messy, so time to do that. So the flexi bark itself is actually quite a wet paste, and as you can see I've got some on the end of this cocktail stick, or this coffee stirrer here, and what I'm going to do is literally paste it on, just like that, just to get on all the wires. It goes on remarkably easy, considering I thought it'd be a bit of a job, but no, it's actually quite satisfying. It's extremely sticky already, extremely tacky, and it just goes on quite nicely. And of course all you're trying to do is break up the wire pattern, and then once it dries, of course, it forms a bit of a coating which isn't smooth, so you've got yourself almost bark texture, which is what you're after, really. The trick's just not to try and get it on particularly thick if you can help it. Obviously there's probably better ways to apply it than a coffee stirrer, but this is what was suggested to me, and it works extremely well, especially because it just paddles it in, and of course it doesn't ruin your brushes. So I'm going to continue with this now, and hopefully get this coated up in no time at all and let this dry. And just like that, there's my haggardy old tree. Now I'm going to let this dry, and then it might need to change shape again. Now this pot of flexi bark, you see, the scoop you just saw of the flexi bark, I literally only needed half again to cover this tree, so this pot's going to last me forever. But I've been told it's good stuff. Literally, if it ever dries out, just add a bit of water to it, get it back to that texture, and away you go. So that's going to last for a while. So I'm going to let this dry, and then I'm going to get to painting it a bit brown. So we're now a day later, and as you can see, that's dried quite nicely, and it's still in its tree shape. So as you can tell, I've got the Humble dark brown wash. This is literally just because I've got it, and I'm just going to start coating this over. It's dried slightly sort of purple, purpley pink, but you can see where I've dabbed the brown on. I'm just going to go over the whole tree now, and then let it dry. So now that's painted brown. As you can see, I've got 2. The next stage, this is the fun stage, using the Woodland Scenics foliage. This is the one that comes out like a netting, and you literally pull it apart. I don't know if you can see that. You just pull it apart very finely, and the idea is you lay it on top of the tree. So I'm literally going to make a bit of mess here. I'm literally just going to spray the top with some hairspray and then lay it on, quite literally. So I'm going to make a lot of mess. Smells amazing. And just lay the first bit on. Of course, you'd pull it apart to be very thin. It's as simple as that with your tree. There we go, and you keep going until you're happy. So what I'm going to do now is just continue laying a bit more foliage on this, and then I'll come back to you when we're at the next stage. So there's my tree looking rather tree-like now. The next stage is to spray another layer of hairspray on top, and then literally sprinkle some coarse turf from Woodland Scenics over the top, just to thicken it out and get a bit of depth to it. And there we go. A very odd looking tree, but a tree nonetheless. I'm going to let that dry now and then stick it on the diorama. And there we are. The tree's now stuck in position. As you can see, it's nice and flat. I did leave these lower parts open because there's going to be quite a tall hedge here coming along. But as you can see, a bit of greenery really does the scene quite nicely. And as you can see, it's slowly coming together. I think when the hedging and whatnot starts to go in, it'll really start to take shape. But I'm really pleased with that. As ever, thank you for watching, and take care, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.